Welcome back, travelers, to legendary lore. And what's that behind you, Joe?
That's a painting.
Fair. But what's that behind you, audience? Is it old Stickfingers? That's who we're talking about today, by the way.
Fun.
Yeah, it's pretty great. It's pretty interesting. You'll see what I mean very soon. So it opens up with Vadric, and Vadric is cool because he was actually on an old card. He was on an old card from a commander set.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe's putting that card up right now. And now, this is Vadric now. So, the whole deal is that he is an astronomancer, which means he works with basically astrology. And he leaves Nephalia on these summons from his old friend Genric. Stuff like this is happening. Genric, by the way, being a person that died in the Eldritch Moon storyline.
Oh.
Yes. So, Vadric leaves his husband, Halen, and he goes off on a journey, right? So it keeps going, and he gets to this town, the village of Lamholt. And Lamholt, you've heard plenty of things about Lamholt. There's been plenty of different references to this stuff like that, right? Well, he gets to Lamholt, and there's just this guy, this guard, right? And he's like, he sees Vadric approaching. He takes out his crossbow, aims it directly at him, and he shoots the crossbow. And the guy's like, I'm sorry. I thought there was something behind you in the dark. Like, just behind you. And he's like, yeah, sure. Okay. And the thing is that Vadric is a scholar, right? Obviously, as an astronomancer, he has some teaching. And so he thinks that this place is kind of like a backwoods, backwater, nobody has any like wit about them kind of thing. They're governed by superstition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I am Vadric of Nephalia. I have been called here by the crones and mothers of your village. Come to see about the slave. And he's like, oh, yes, you're welcome. I could have sworn I saw it. And the kid's just like mumbling to himself. And he's like, uh-huh. And so he goes by and he can hear children playing. Now, Joe, what can you tell me about children's nursery rhymes?
They all involve death.
Yeah. So here's I'm so glad that was your response, because that's exactly the deal here. So here we have the kids. They're singing a song that says, Old Stickfingers, terror bringer, knows when children disobey. If you're slacking, he's attacking. Did you do your chores today? Old Stickfingers, presence lingers inside every hollow tree. Don't sneak out, or you'll shout, and no one will remember thee. And these kids are just happy and playing along doing this. And it's like, okay, sure. And so Vadric just kind of goes, and he remembers, Vadric thinks of Halen, and thinks about his husband, and he doesn't remember him singing that particular song. So he's like, okay, that's weird. that's never a good sign, especially on Innistrad, where literally every monster is real. And so Vadric goes in, he meets a bunch of the crones, which are like the elders, basically, and they sit in a semicircle, and they're all talking, right? And they basically lay it on him like there's this thing in the woods. And it's funny because as he gets in here, right, this is man, and the man's like, oh good, I'm dying for some ale. And he goes, wait a minute, you're not a servant, you're an archmage? What are you doing here? And Vadric's like, well, they called me. I could ask the same thing of you, like, why are you here? And one of the elders is like, hey, both of you, don't fight. We need you both. And so the one of the crones is like, Vadric, meet Rem. And Vadric's like, I know who he is, but why would you call for a monster slayer if you called for me, a guy who uses magic to deal with problems? And they basically, it turns out that the crones called for Vadric, and a guy named Dean Zelvasi called for Rem. And Rem's like, yes, I am Rem Carolus, or Inquisitor Carolus. And all Vadric can see is that this guy is arrogant, right? And I would just like to point out at this point, I'm not sure if we mentioned it prior, but the reason Rem shows up in the artwork in his card with a griff is because he saw Thalia use a griff to take on a flying monster, and he wishes that he had been there to do it too, to take the fight directly to Emrakul. So in this story, he doesn't have his griff with him. He doesn't use the griff at all. But just so we that explains why the griff is
part of his overall character now.
Yeah, his overall character is, if there's a fight to be had, he wants to be there.
Anywhere.
Yeah. So Rem and Vadric do not see eye to eye at all. And that's kind of what we kind of get, right? And then the Crones explain that 3 weeks ago, a guy named Arinos went missing. He had been arguing with his neighbor, a guy named Dean Salvasi, the one that also is now dead. And Dean Salvasi was the wealthiest man in Lamholt. And so they had him as the primary suspect until he went missing in Fields of Rye. And then he was found dead in a pasture, or part of him. Then Lakil, who was a shepherdess, she was found dead in a pasture, or parts of her were, and a werewolf was suspected as being the reason. So basically, all of these different things all these like little things keep happening. People keep dying in different manners, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Rem says that he will set the town free from fear. Like, he's very, very confident in his ability. And the old woman explains that old Stickfingers is the thing that they're worried about. They say that he has had 1,000 names for 10,000 years. And that the guy named Aval, the Vine Lord of the Hearth, like, they've called him different things. Aval, the Vine Lord of the Hearth. Makath, the Destroyer. And people call him a guardian spirit. And at this point, old Stickfingers is just seen as a boogeyman. Or at least he was, until everything started going terrible. And then a person runs in and he says, "There's been a murder." And they're like, "What?" So Malin, one of the crones, is like, "I told you it was Stickfingers. I won't see none of you lot doubt me again." And like, people are shaken. They're freaking out because obviously anything could happen, right? Mm-hmm. And so Rem takes out his rapier and he's going around ready to protect everyone and anything from this creature. And so Vedrick and Rem, they go and they investigate this murder. And they find 3 corpses. Now what's crazy is that out of these corpses, 2 of them are guys and one of them is a werewolf. And obviously this is the werewolf that had killed that girl that was found in the pasture. So they figured, okay, well, that was the problem. Problem solved. Except, wait, there's a dead werewolf. And all 3 of these guys look like they were killed the exact same way. Punctured by arrows, but no arrows to be found. So that's already weird. And so Rem's like, okay, Vadrick, use your magic powers and find us the way. And Vadrick's like, oh, yeah, you think I'm some kind of bloodhound. Use my magic. And then you go and you kill it, right? And this is the little hunting game for you? Is that the deal? Is that why I'm here? To help you? And Rem's like, please? And so Vedrick's like, okay, yeah, whatever. And he does it. He conjures it, and they can find the steps. And they're like, okay, it's this way. And they tell everybody else, okay, stay behind. It's too dangerous. We don't want Stickfingers killing anybody else. We'll take care of them. And Rem's about to go, and he goes, Vedrick, you coming? And Vedrick looks at him like, I really don't like the arrogance this guy is putting off. If you guys want, you should read it. You really should, because there's so much characterization put into the way Rem and Vedrick interact. And this is just one aspect of that. Vedrick basically just conjures up a little spell, and then the Cathar suddenly has no mouth. And he's like, can't even frown at him. He's just eyes burning hatred at Vedrick. Like, stop! And Vedrick's like, oh, did you forget that I am an extremely powerful magical being? I am an archmage, not a hound. And he snaps his fingers, and Rem's mouth reappears. And Vedrick goes off down the tracks without even looking to see if Rem's going to follow him. And Malin, one of the crones, is like, hey, don't make Stickfingers angry. We just need him to not want to kill people. That's it. And so Vedrick and Rem are going through this super dark forest. and everything looks like it could be Stickfingers because it's just a bunch of trees that are kind of bent and like look like they're reaching out, right? And then the green light they were following dissipates. And Rem's like, your magic ran out. And Vedrick's like, no, we just reached the end of the path. And they're looking at the trees. And they can hear distant wind chimes tinkling. And Vedrick's there and Rem goes, could you make a light? I seem to have forgotten my lantern. And so Remden says, thanks. And he goes, for what? He goes, for the light. I didn't cast any light spells. And they turn around, and old Stickfingers is just this. It's thin as an elder, taller than a man, skin stretched tight against small bones, fingers like twigs, a creature of nightmare of every child's imagination. It's basically a Wendigo. It's basically the creature from over the garden wall. And it's got like 1,000 eyes. It's a bit of an exaggeration. He has these too many eyes. He counts 7 at one point. And it's cool because the way it describes it, he was there and he wasn't there. You could look right at him and be sure he was creeping up on you. He was made of fear, like nothing Vedrick had ever seen.
Awesome.
And so Vedrick creates like a force field around himself, right? And he just kind of looks at the creature like, what is this? Why is this? How is this? He's just studying it. Now, what do you think Rem does?
Rem's attacking it.
Yeah, he goes, cursed beast! And he just stabs through Stickfinger's abdomen. And this white blood pours out. It looks like moonlight. And it goes around the blade. And Stickfingers roars. And when he roars, it sounds like 100 dogs. And it just like completely fills Vedrick's head. And like he's like not driven mad, but like driven to his knees kind of thing. And Vedrick like starts trying to like regain control of himself. And he forces his mind to go right. Because he actually had to learn on the fly how to use magic that would stop your mind from being warped. Can you think of any times where someone on Innistrad might have had to avoid getting their mind warped by a powerful eldritch entity, Joe?
Oh, no, nothing comes to mind.
No, nothing comes to mind, of course. Other than that business, the travails maybe. But no, definitely
We
not.
don't talk about the travails.
Yeah, nobody talks about the travails. So Vedrick casts a paralysis spell, and it does nothing to Stickfingers. It's like, And so one of the hands wraps around Vedrick's waist, the other one reaches out for Rem, who keeps slashing at it like he thinks he's going to do something about it. And then so Vedrick, he realizes there's no form of subtlety here, and so he shoots some ice at Stickfingers and knocks it off balance slightly. And so both of the guys, they twist free, and they turn around, and Stickfingers is gone. And all that's left is his white blood pooling on the floor. And Vedrick, real quick, he sits up from where he was fallen. He reaches into his kit, takes out a syringe and a vial, and he gets some of the creature's blood. And Rem's like, I don't think we killed it. But the fact that like Rem did what he did, he was able to wound it enough to where it didn't want to deal with them anymore, if that makes sense. Yeah. Right? And so Vedrick's like, we didn't kill it, and thank you. Like, he has to admit, Rem's the only reason they didn't die. Because Vedrick's magic was only annoying it. Rem was actually hurting it, even if he wasn't killing it, right? So there must have been a lot of creatures in the graveyard for Rem to do nothing, even with all his little attacks, but you get the idea. So, they get back there, and they go to see Malin. And he's like, good morning!
Good morning.
And she's like, it's not. And there's a woman singing. She goes, every time you break my skin, I will break another man. It's like,
that's weird.
What does that mean? And it turns out that every time that they try to fight the creature, it just decides, okay, I'm going to have to kill another guy. And so they looking at this newcomer her name is Ariosa. She is the daughter of Arinos, and she says that her father was a superstitious man, and he would always keep sheep teeth on the mantle and werewolf teeth under the mattress. And it turns out, as they're going, that they see this little like a totem kind of deal, right? Now, Joe, what is it usually that you when you see these kinds of stories? What is the purpose of the totem?
The ward.
It could be a ward. It can also be used for summoning. And so that's what Vadric and Rem immediately think, is that this thing hanging there, because they investigated the whole house. They found like signs of crazy stuff happening, like someone had written in their own blood that it's right behind you.
I was actually going to say summoning too, and just like, oh, you use the totem to summon Ultima and bomb the field. It's like, wow, that would have been the more accurate answer.
Well, here's the thing. They eventually find this thing, and so they think, okay, easiest thing to do, if this creature's suddenly been killing people, and this thing also just is here, most likely it's a summoning charm, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they break it. And when they break it, they're like, oh no, that wasn't a summoning charm. That was a warding charm.
Oh, so I was right the first time. Now I look foolish. The goon answer was the goon answer.
Basically, what was happening was that as long as that thing was there, Stickfingers couldn't kill everyone. It could only kill some people. So it was partially like a summoning thing. Stickfingers has always been there, but it was relatively calm.
Sounds like they need a stronger ward to begin with.
So suddenly they hear, he's inside the walls. A man shouts that. And there's about 30 villagers holding weapons in their hands, and there's fear in their eyes. And he goes, he's only killed in the fields and the forest. There's no reason to believe he is inside the walls. And they're like, well.
It's like, about that.
Yeah.
Score 1 for the bad guys.
And this is the point where they realize that, cause, I mean, I'll just say it the way he says it. Vadric's like, he has been dismissed back from whence he came. And they're like, you saw it? And Vadric's like, well, no, but I performed a ritual, and as I have done 100 times, I heard the death knell of the beast. And they're like, they set him free. We did what? And Vadric's like, no, we didn't. We didn't set him free. This thing is like, it doesn't act like most demons I've dealt with, but we broke the binding, and so it must have. He goes, no. Okay, maybe we did. And they say, we're not, Malin says, we can make it through the night if we work together. Because it has a very specific weakness. And it's in the song, Joe. Do you remember what the song said?
No.
Basically, first off, remember how he's a guardian spirit?
Yes.
So if they work on it and they make a proper seal, the other seal was incomplete, they can actually make it to where it'll just protect the town, as opposed to killing anything that's outside the town. So the ritual is super simple. Tall man, long man, will you guard this home? She's saying. Protect the one who calls, who dwells here all alone. And then Malin, she brings in a goat. And she says, do we take it to the grove? And he's like, we don't have time for that. Yeah, he came a lot faster, because Stickfingers is now there, behind them. Old Stickfingers of the elders, take this goat in lieu of me. Ariosa basically just holds it up. And Aval, Vine Lord, Old Destroyer, harm you none without my plea. And Stickfingers barks at her, and the white goat walks over to him. And Vadric watches tries not to look at the goat, but he can hear it getting completely eviscerated. And it doesn't happen. Vadric says, Rem, protect the people. Everyone keep your eye on everybody else's back, basically. And as long as you guys do your thing, we'll be able to go back to where the initial ritual started and complete it, and we'll be able to save everyone from Stickfingers. And so to do that, they keep track of everybody's back. So they would see him behind a barn, or they would see him behind somebody, and that person would be able to get away. And Rem was basically just slashing to make sure that nothing happened, right?
So anyway, I started slashing.
Yeah, pretty much. And so it says right here, Malin says that he's not a creature of the town or a city. He's a creature who guards houses. And he says they stand like rocks in the river or the field. Your place, he will be your guardian for the length of the binding, a decade and a day. And so they know that if they can get back to that farmhouse where they initially did the ritual, they can save everyone, right? And so she starts singing a song. Tall man, long man, will you guard this home? Protect the one who calls, who dwells here all alone. And they take out a goat. And she goes, here, take this goat instead of me. And Vadric's like, I don't want to see this goat get eviscerated. And so he closes his eyes and he doesn't hear it. He doesn't hear the goat get exploded or anything. And so he opens his eyes and he looks, and he's surprised when he sees that Stickfingers has one long finger on the neck of the goat and is petting it. And there's as they begin to walk off toward the trees, another goat, a black one, the initial one that was used, also comes out of the trees to join them. So basically, because they finished the thing, what you need to say, harm you none without my plea. So by adding that bit for a decade and a day, Stickfingers will not kill anyone unless she tells them to. So now there's no more murders that can happen from it. And what's funny is that throughout this whole deal, Vadric and Rem kind of come to respect each other. You know, the whole buddy cop scenario.
I was gonna say, this has just been a buddy cop episode.
Yeah, it has been a buddy cop episode. And so with everything solved, Rem asks him, where to next, old man? He's like, nowhere. You go your way. I'm going home. He goes, but we're such a good team.
I kind of hope they come up in like a commander deck with partner with each other.
I would love that. I would love to see a partner where the two of them are actually usable. Because, like, yeah, they're usable like in niche scenarios, but like where they were actually like just really strong together specifically.
Like support each other specifically. That'd be a Jeskai deck I'd use.
Yeah.
I don't use any other kind of Jeskai deck.
I love Rem's response though. I've got the brawn and the bravery. You've got the brains and the power. And, you know, little twinkly magic lights. What songs they'll sing of us together. Unstoppable. And Vadric's like, He goes, one day we'll give them more cause to sing songs of us, I don't doubt. Rem Carolus. Just now, though, there's a man waiting at home whose voice matters more to me than any bard. Be well, adventure well. And it's cool because Rem knew Genric and knew how powerful his magic was. And as Vadric goes off, he says, even Genric wasn't as good at the twinkly magic lights as you are. You'd make him proud. And then Vadric turns around and looks at him, and Rem says, I was joking about the twinkly lights, but not that Genric would be proud. And so then it comes to the children singing at the end. Sticky Stick, he killed Vic. Don't go near. Don't go near. Mr. Sticks has lots of tricks he can hear when you fear. Old Dame Hilgen lost her children. Where they've been, where have they been? Old Stick Buddy in the muddy, drag them in. Where's their skin? And that's how the story ends. It's just with them singing about Stick.
That was really good.
Yeah, it's just like a really nice self-contained story. And because of the fact that it has a bit of a happy ending, yes, there were several horrific murders and a terrifying monster, but for Innistrad, it had a happy ending. And so I felt like that's a really good one to have at the start of this thing. It came in a little later in the Midnight Hunt cycle. Mm-hmm. But
you could put it closer to the beginning here since it didn't relate to our overlying story.
Yeah, exactly. It has a bit more of there's a lightness to it. So that's why I included it here. But yeah, that was the story.
Well, thank you guys so much for watching. We're going to go ahead and catch you next time with some more legendary lore. So leave a like if you like the video and subscribe to catch the rest of the Midnight Hunt story.